As you can see from this post-war photo, this area was once a parade ground used by the military in the 19th century, and it appears that any medieval buildings here were destroyed during the construction work. I have to admit I've been more interested in the medieval story than the later history on this site, but after finding out that one of the walls we've uncovered was part of the governor's mansion, I'm intrigued to know a bit more about it.
This one shows one side of it, so we've got our church there, and this one shows the front. Just before it was knocked down in 1826. Looks rather nice, doesn't it? And it was the scene of some of the most amazing moments. A few years before it was knocked down, in 1814, there was a massive 4-day party here to celebrate the defeat of Napoleon. And we've got a list of the people who were here. We've got the Prince Regent, with the Emperor of Russia, Frederick, King of Prussia, Marshal Blücher, Prince Platov, whoever he may be, and a host of others. They all came. The Duke of Wellington did turn up 2 days late, but then perhaps he was allowed to.
Hang on, did you just say defeat of Napoleon in 1814?
Yeah, you're thinking of the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, aren't you? There was a bit of a problem because just as they were celebrating, I think he was escaping from Elba, and they had to do it all over again.
We may not have found anything belonging to the Emperor of Russia, but having cleaned up the ring we found yesterday, Helen believes it probably does date to the time the house was being demolished in the 19th century.
You can see much more clearly now what's going on.
I will do if I put my glasses on.
So in these 3 holes, there would have been stones. And then you can see here, there's an S, then there's an A, and then the big one there is an R. And then after that, he's had a go at doing an A or an H. It says Sarah. So I think it really is a bit of sentimental jewellery. It's for a sailor's girl. He's bought it. He's tried to write Sarah. Perhaps it hasn't quite worked. He might have chucked it away.
Well, yeah, maybe the relationship made him chuck it away.
With time running out, we've now stopped digging here in what was Phil's original trench. It's possible that we've turned up evidence of the larder or food store house shown on this plan, but it'll take a much longer dig to sort it out. With the people who invited us here starting to crowd around the trenches, all our efforts are now being focused here in Trench 2, where we'd like to be able to prove to them that we've found the medieval hall belonging to the hospital. Right now, Phil's extending this excavation yet again to see if he can find the western end of the building.
Mac?
Yeah?
I reckon I got it.
You think you've got it?
Yeah, I reckon I got it.
At last we've found what we think is another medieval wall, and it's parallel to the wall we've already identified at the other end of the trench. Now it feels like we're getting somewhere.
So it's going to be about that sort of width like that then?
Well, it's about that sort of width, but I'll tell you when I dug it.
Yeah.
It seems this medieval building didn't get updated to become part of the governor's mansion and would have gone out of use when the hospital was closed down by Henry VIII in 1540, along with the country's monasteries and other religious institutions. As we race to make sense of the barrow or mine or whatever it might be, the bigger picture is beginning to take shape. Sometime about 6,000 years ago, people came to Blackpatch. They sunk mines in search of flint and used that flint to clear the trees. After mining drew to a close, this became a sacred place. About 4,000 years ago, our ring barrow was built and ritual pits placed around it. 1,000 years later, Blackpatch became what it is today, a place of settlement and farming. When I was up here 2.5 days ago, I thought that I was going to be looking for a Neolithic residential site with a few flint mines attached, but it seems to have got more and more complex as the dig's gone on.
They're very difficult sites to sort out, flint mines. People, I think, are coming here to mine flint, but it's not just purely an industrial activity, it's a big communal activity. And when they're here, they're not living here for like generation after generation and for hundreds of years.
So when John Poole said that what we'd got here was a Neolithic settlement, he was wrong, wasn't he?
No, he hadn't. He came and he saw pits, which he interpreted as being dwellings. He was absolutely right. At Myrtle Grove, that's what we've got. We've got dwellings of the Bronze Age period. He didn't notice the Bronze Age period. In fact, at that time, The distinction between the Bronze Age, the Iron Age and the Roman period was all conflated anyway. And with all the science and 50 or 60 years worth of advancement of knowledge in archaeology, we're still struggling to answer the questions he asked.
We're certainly struggling to make sense of the ring ditch.
The bottom isn't very deep.
We've hit solid chalk beneath our stash of flint, which means it's not a 6-metre deep mine. But if it's not a mine, what is it?
I mean, that's weird, isn't it?
It is. It's curious to think what this might be. I mean, it's really this whole central space within the ditch. And the only other feature within the interior is this very sort of irregular tree flow hole.
But no burials.
No burials.
I mean, over there, in the flint mines, they're digging holes and they're getting flint out. And here, they're digging holes and they're putting flint back. It's almost as if it was some form of a burial, of a ritual, of offerings. And then you get the ditch goes around the outside and it sort of bounds this sacred area, and then you get those commemorative pits.
Indeed.
I think it's fantastic. Can you think of another one?
No, it is unique.
So this barrow wasn't built to honour the dead, but to honour the two things that dominated prehistoric life here on Blackpatch Hill: flint and trees. It was flint that brought people to Blackpatch, and flint that helped them to clear the trees and shape the world around them.
But if he hadn't done all that stuff, we wouldn't be here.
No.
In just 3 days, we've begun to unravel 3,000 years of history. A process begun by one man, John Paul. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks ever so much for all the work that you've done over the last 3 days. But before we go, there's one small presentation that we have to make to Phil. Can you take your hat off, please? You'd forgotten, hadn't you?
I totally.
Ta-da!
God.
Neolithic man.
Beautiful. It's in such good condition. You just found it in the garden.
Absolutely beautiful, isn't it? Yes, just lying on the surface.
Your letter said the British Museum dated it 6th, 7th century.
They did, yes.
It's a copper alloy.
Yes, it is.
And you're interested in how it was actually made?
I'm very interested to know how it was formed.
Perhaps you could go away and see if you could reproduce it. How long will that take? We're going to be here all day? Or?
No, hopefully that we can do it in about half an hour once we've unravelled the knot. But
of course, you won't literally unravel it.
No, not literally. Don't worry, Tim. The ring will be safe with us. We'll produce a perfect reproduction, I hope. You can imagine that they could wind the wire around anything at all, really. A stick of wood would be okay. Any work process on metal like this hardens it slightly and makes it rather less easy to bend. And as we want to be able to bend the knot and weave it by hand, preferably, it would be a good idea to anneal it at this stage. Now, annealing is simply heating up to red heat. But unlike a blacksmith, we don't have to keep it red hot. We can let it cool down again afterwards. As long as it has passed through a red hot stage, it will then be nice and soft and malleable and workable again. This is going to form, as I said, the main part of the ring. The decoration that we put on afterwards, that is the much finer part that covers the shoulders on either side of the knot, I shall be making from this same bit of wire, but drawing it down to a finer wire.
You just a question of working the metal, heating it up to soften it and working it again,
right,
and you can correct mistakes. You can do this as often as you like.
That's right, exactly.
It's as simple as that. Does this answer your questions as to how the ring was made?
Well, I'm amazed how easy Ian has made it look. I imagined it to be a very complicated process to produce such a knot, but I am absolutely amazed.
Shall I try that on to see?
Yes, does it fit? It's a little bit large.
It fits reasonably well, yes.
Join Time Team on Patreon to access exclusive 3D models, masterclasses and behind-the-scenes insights.